Well, they did it. They went and re-elected the orange Hitler again. The tangerine nightmare is headed back to the White House. So here's what we need to do, ladies. We need to pull out our old dusty pussy hats and parade again. That's right. It's time to get these babies out and dress up and get back on the streets. Let them know who's large and in charge. Who let this happen? Who thought it was a good idea to let the devil back up into the world? We need to get out our costumes, our outfits, all the things they said were just nasty. Look at all those nasty people. That's right, because we're fighting the nasty people on the right. All you nuts that are trying to take away personal rights and women's rights, and taking away the rights of children, and taking away the rights of people that want to live safely without guns shoved in their face everywhere they go. So it is time to put these back on and put ourselves back on the street and back where we belong, fighting the people that are trying to kill us. Why do these weirdos... I don't know how these freaks of nature got together enough to elect Donald Trump. How did that happen? I was listening to CNN and MSNBC, and they were all telling us we were winning. They were telling us Kamala was going to be the next president. No. Did they lie to us, or did they cheat? I'm pretty sure they cheated. So put the pussy hat back on and show them how tough a pussy can be.
You want to keep more of the money you earn? I'm afraid that's very selfish. We shall want to tax that away. You want to own shares in your firm? We can't have that. The state has to own your firm. You want to choose where to send your children to school? That's very divisive. You'll send your child where we tell you. Mr. President, the trouble with Labour is that they're just not at home with freedom. Socialists don't like ordinary people choosing, for they might not choose socialism.
What happens when the other side has repeatedly and abundantly made clear they are not interested in playing by the rules? It's a problem. And when that happens, we fight for what we believe in. There are going to be times, potentially, when one side tries to stack the deck and lock in a permanent grip on power.
A permanent grip on power. But do you see how he stuttered? That was the purpose why that guy made that video, right? With the arrow going like this. If you and I have been saying now, Joe Resinello, for the last 6 years, okay? It's all projection from the left. It's all projection. What he just did, first of all, he is somber. He is grim. He's angry. And we'll get into what Margaret Thatcher and that first wacko had to say. But on Barack Obama, okay, he's pursing his lips and he's talking about permanent grip on power. When the other side, tries things. Dude, he really is, Joe, I'm going to throw it over to you. He really is an elitist because he thinks we're all so stupid that we don't know that he just described himself.
He was such a mistake. That was such a mistake by the American people. I'm going to be honest with you. It has nothing to do with his color. I'd say the same thing if he was Catholic and Italian. What a mistake. The influence that he wielded in the Democratic Party brought us the 4 years that we just endured. Our cities are like third world nations. Our public school system is a disaster. Wokeism, the largest wealth transfer in the history of America took place during COVID. I blame all on Barack Obama. All of it. Disaster. Humongous mistake. We dodged such a bullet with Harris not being the president. People have no idea.
No, well, well, here's the thing, though, and correct me if I'm wrong. And I know what you mean because that's kind of a phrase, and I would probably use it too. People have no idea. They do have an idea. That's why they trounced her ass right out of contention. They're talking about her running for governor of California.
Oh.
Dudess. I guess if you're talking to Kamala, it's Dudess. Dudette or Dudess, whatever you want to be called. You ain't winning California because they rejected you the first time when you tried to run in the Democrat primary. And by the way, all of you joining us out there at the front line with Joe and Joe, please like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. We're over Rumble, Facebook, YouTube, X. Please share on X. Help us out there. But yeah, Obama's just a cheesed off ex-president. But he's not an ex-president. See, this is where it gets a little sticky, Joe Resinello. He's not an ex-president, even though technically, okay, if you wanted to say de jure, he is an ex-president, but de facto, he was president for the last 4 years. Okay, everybody knows that because everybody knows that Joe Biden is scrumbiad in the head, as my mother would say. Okay, and that's what he's pissed about. See, he thinks we're all so stupid that we think that we think Joe Biden was actually the president of the United States. We know, number one, Biden cheated and the Democrats cheated. And number two, Biden is a puppet on a string. Okay. Biden and the guy who's holding the puppeteer is Barack Obama. Okay. That's the bottom line. And he's pissed because Kamala was going to be his fourth term. And the American people said, no, that's why he's going purse his lips and like that. And Angry Joe, you and I have seen it a million times. It's a real Italian move, like Italian-American move, where you go like this, like when you make those faces. All right? You're not a tough guy, Barack. You're not a tough guy. You lost. You got trounced. And the only thing they're going to try to do now, and we have only less than 3 weeks away till Trump is inaugurated, I still don't put anything past them. China is already talking about going on lockdown for some sort of virus or whatever the case might be. Bird flu, whatever. And it's Patrick Coffin on X. He tweeted out, no, not this time. I'm paraphrasing. We're not doing that this time. Okay. So these guys have something up their sleeve, and Barack Obama is not going to go gently into that good night. That's the bottom line, Joe.
Well, Joe, I mean, if you saw, obviously, we're going to talk about what happened in New Orleans in a little bit, but also in New York the last few days, there was a humongous demonstration. Some very radical things were being said, talking about what's going on in the Middle East, promising trouble, global jihad. That was what was being chanted in New York City, the streets of New York City. This is going to be a tumultuous time. A lot of people in this country are not just going to sit on their hands and accept the fact that Donald Trump is the president and was legitimately elected, both the popular vote and the electoral vote. That means nothing. That means nothing to them. We just saw on the first of the year 2 horrendous events. One in front of Trump Tower, blowing up one of Elon Musk's cars. That is a message. That is a message.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely a message of things to come.
Here's what's going to come, though, Joe.
Crazy year.
Joe, what's going to come, though, right on top of their heads is this time Donald Trump has learned. And he's not going to watch cities burn down and people getting killed. He will send in the National Guard.
Well, I think you're right.
Go ahead.
I think you're right, because it's funny. I was just saying this to my wife. Lightning doesn't strike twice. They were hoping it was going to with this election. It never does. You don't get the same, usually outcome many times in anything in life. And that is exactly right. They may see a different consequence, one they may not like, because the people are behind Trump. He has the bully pulpit. And I got news for you. I think people are fed up. Right. They're fed up with this. They're fed up with the violence on the subways. They're fed up with what just happened in New Orleans. They're fed up what's going on in California, the dumpster fire that it was once the most beautiful state in America. They're fed up. And I got news for you. If you have the people behind you, you can send in the National Guard and no one will say boo.
Well, here's the thing, and I hope people understand this because again, we saw it from domestic terrorists like Antifa and Black Lives Matter when they did it back in 2020. Okay, when the National Guard should have been sent in. Trump's not going to lay down for this. Number one. Number two, just to throw it out there, and we said this on the show before, and I know he told you this. Joe, before I even knew you in my life, before you were married to my sister-in-law, okay, I said, not in some genius way. I'm not trying to say I wasn't being Joe Stradamus, okay?
Nice.
But what I did say was if I was the terrorist, because I forgot, I think it was Lawrence at the time around 2001, right after September 11th. I think it was Lawrence Eagleberger or somebody was on TV, and they had made the point that the terrorists that the attack on the World Trade Center was evil genius, okay? But it was a one-off. I don't know if it was Eagleberger that said that, but it was a one-off, okay? Because they were never going to be able to pull that off again. And I said, I remember talking to the guys when I was a stockbroker, when it was all going on. I remember that not long after that, I said to them, I said, you know what? If I was one of these guys, not for nothing, you just did something you're not going to be able to do again, okay? And you did it masterfully. Let's be clear. I'm not giving them credit, okay? It was evil genius, as Eagleberger said. But if I was like their leaders, I'd be like, now you start doing what we're seeing now, like in Germany, okay? In other words, where a guy runs through a marketplace or in New Orleans, okay? I'm surprised they haven't been doing this for the last 23, 24 years. Random acts of violence, Joe, could shake a nation, could really shake a nation. The only thing is, back then, again, talking about like establishment Republicans, Democrats wouldn't have done anything. They tried this BS with Donald Trump. Not for nothing. These guys they're gonna kill a lot of people, unfortunately. And we're gonna play a clip in a little bit from Sebastian Gorka. We better have our heads on a swivel, okay? Because they are now doing, or at least it looks like what they're doing, are random acts of violence. And that is potentially worse because you got a lot of guys driving cars through markets and things like that are blowing themselves up in a supermarket. They could take a lot more lives than they did on September 11th. What do you say?
Absolutely. Listen, if you want to hurt people, you absolutely can, especially if you want to disregard your own life, like that guy in Vegas. He shot himself in the head before the car blew up.
Right.
I mean, like, if you want to do something like that, the sky's the limit. And
Right.
I'll tell you what, like I said, people are not going to sit on their hands. Joe, they absolutely hate this man. 28% of the American population wished he was killed during the first assassination attempt. That's more than 1 in 4.
And you know what they would say? They would say, yeah, but you guys did the same thing to Barack Obama. I would say, no, 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 no. I
Oh, not
don't
even.
like Barack Obama. I actually will go on record as saying I detest Barack Obama, both as a human being and as a president. But I never said he wasn't my president and never, ever advocate. I do what I've done since the time we were kids. From the time we became politically minded, is when you lose, suck it up, fight against them however you can, and try to win the next time. That's what our democracy, that's what we're always hearing from the media, our democracy is all about. Barack Obama's the guy who doesn't respect democracy because he doesn't like that second clip of Margaret Thatcher. The socialists don't want you to choose because you might not choose them. 30 years before Barack Obama, she summed up Barack Obama. Barack Obama doesn't like the American people because they didn't choose him. Because in his mind, and he knows it, and he knows we know it, a vote for Kamala was a vote for him.
Well, he's done. I'll be truthful with you because
I think you're right. I think you're right about that.
He's done. The second he leaves D.C., it's over because he's building 2 homes next to each other in Hawaii on the beach.
Please go. I know it's one of our states, but at least it's thousands of miles away in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Please just go and leave us alone.
That will be the sign when he puts that house up for sale in D.C. First president in the history of America to stay in Washington, D.C. because he still had a say in the power structure. That's a fact. Right. Unelected say. They talk about Elon Musk not having a say. Well, guess what? Barack Obama had so much of a say. God knows what, one day it'll come out. But when he does leave, it's over. But I'll tell you what, I do think Trump is going to have a successful presidency. I do. I've heard this and I think I agree with it. I actually think he's going to win the midterms because I'll tell you what, the Democrats haven't learned from this
They're
law.
doubling down, Joe.
And it's a loser.
Listen, for everybody watching, look, I don't know if you're seeing it the right way.
It's a loser.
It's a loser because they're going to stay with the woke. They're going to stay with abortion up to the moment of birth, whether a person's pro-choice or not, which is not my point. But most Americans, 80% of Americans, are not for that. They'll stick with that. They'll stick with giving all sorts of money to Harvard and Yale and keeping the Department of Education. Most of the American people are loving Trump's agenda. They can't wait for it to be enacted.
Well, I'll tell you that would be the straw that breaks the camel's back. A terrorist act takes place in America, and the person is traced to the border with 100% certainty. That's it.
No, I hear you.
The end. The end.
Let's talk about terrorism. But before we do, thanks for joining us here. We got a great crowd going, Joe, in the chat and viewers across social media, X, Facebook, Rumble, YouTube. Please like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. So a couple shout outs. Sylvain's there. Hey, Bob Sylvain's in there. Bob, I will say this. We're not going to talk about it tonight. I watched clips of the John Gotti Jr. interview with Patrick Bet-David. And we'll talk about it another time because I thought he was very open. He was very honest. Okay. And I'm not enamored with guys who are either ex-gangsters or whatever, but I thoroughly enjoyed his interview. And I would recommend if anybody wants to hear what he has to say about his father and other things, it is a good interview. I will agree with you on that. Sylvain. So Sylvain's with us. But Joe, we got a bunch of new faces. We have Carol Bene's here. Hey, Bob. Just scrolling down here. We got bear with me, guys, because we don't really. Colin, haven't seen you in a while, brother. What's going on? So Colin's with us. Sean, what's up, Sean? Teresa's here as always. We got Remy. We got Antonella. We love Antonella. We love you all. And Robert. Roger's here. Christiana's here. So we got a really good crowd going. If I missed anybody, lost justice. So we got Mary's here. Mary Fatakas. Hi, Mary. So we got a good crowd going on. If I missed you, I apologize. But I want to play this clip because we were talking about terrorism. And, Sebastian Gorka was part of Trump's administration the first time. He gets a lot of crap from people. I don't think that's really fair. I think he's a pretty level-headed guy. Here, let me play this.
Just 10 days after the Christmas market vehicular attack in Germany, we witnessed the slaughter of 15 innocent Americans this morning in New Orleans. What do we know so far? The killer was a U.S. Army veteran of 10 years with a criminal record who apparently converted to Islam last year. He is connected to or has some affinity to the global jihadi movement, as a Shahada ISIS flag was found on his vehicle, along with the multiple explosive devices that he did not successfully use after the ramming attack. According to authorities, this man likely did not act alone. As such, I want to remind you of one very simple fact. The war against global jihad isn't something 8,000 miles away in Central Asia. As soon as you step out of your home in the morning, you are on the front line. You need to be aware of your surroundings and keep your head on a swivel, and you have primary responsibility for protecting yourselves and your loved ones. But rest assured of one thing. In 19 days at 12:01, everything changes. When President Trump takes the oath of office for the second time, when he brings in his new national security team under former Green Beret Mike Waltz as national security advisor, we will have one priority above every other means and every other goal of U.S. government.
And you want to know something? It comes a time, and I'm going to throw it right over to you. And by the way, you're joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Stick around because Joe and I are going to have a meaty conversation about Kevin O'Leary and what he's got to say. So you want to talk about, and I want to, Joe, by the way, I want to take the whole Canada thing seriously, and we're going to get to that. I know you and I do.
I think it's a great idea what he's pitching, but we'll get to it.
I think it's a fantastic idea. But let's say on Gorka. Joe, we've said this before, okay? And this is not a slight against any non-Catholic people out there. The Catholic Church gave the world a template for fighting Islam. Okay. And remember, for 400 years, Joe, for 400 years, okay, the Catholic Europe, Christendom, as it was called, okay, the only time that they actually got aggressive, and it wasn't even aggressive, against the Muslims was in 732 at the Battle of Tours, where Charles Martel beat them back into Spain, and that's where they stayed for centuries. Okay. But up till that point, Islam, the Muslim forces, overtook 2/3 of Christendom. 2/3. So basically, they got Alexandria, they got Jerusalem, they had Constantinople, they took over the Persian Empire, they took over Persia, and they ransacked the whole thing. And the Catholic Church showed restraint and patience, okay? But then they showed that when the time comes, you must fight. And then they fought the Crusades, they fought Lepanto, they fought at Vienna, okay? And they fought and they fought and they fought. Donald Trump is going to take that page, not the European Union's page when it comes to how to. They're all wringing their hands. What do we do about Islam? You need to fight against it. You need to send in the forces and round them up in those ghettos, round them up and send them back, because they're not there to become Frenchmen. They're not there to become Englishmen. They're not there to become Germans. They're not there to become Dutch. They're not there to become Austrians. They're there to finish what started centuries ago after their founding. Donald Trump is not going to let that crap happen in America. Once he's elected and they try any more of this BS, I'm telling you, Joe, he is going to fight the way you're supposed to fight. If somebody wants, I'm going to throw it right over to you. If somebody wants to act like a savage, then you need to treat them like a savage.
Well, it's funny. I mean, the gentleman that committed this crime in New Orleans is an American-born citizen, served in the army, converts to radical Islam, and then commits this atrocity. What people have to realize is Islam is a world religion. There are over 1 billion Muslims that are on this planet. There is a segment of that religion that's violent. That's not stereotyping. That's reality. That's reality. And the people who are the primary, if you ask me, mover to face off against that segment of that religion are Muslims themselves. Whether they're afraid or, frankly, I sometimes wonder, through your silence, you're making a statement. They should be in the streets. And in some cases, they are. Just like with Catholics. Like, if a Catholic does something wrong, listen, Joe Biden's a baptized Catholic. I had a lot of things to say about Joe Biden. I would say them. Because if someone does something right, Joe Biden was for radical abortion. Joe Biden was for same-sex marriage. The Catholic Church doesn't believe in those things. They absolutely don't. I absolutely was outspoken about that. Joe Biden is Catholic. I'm just being consistent. Right. So what I'm saying is the primary mover of the violent segment of Islam, and it exists. Talk to someone in the Sudan right now. Talk to people in Nigeria right now.
Right.
This is going on right now.
Right now. Yes.
So my point is, it's the Muslims have to make those statements. The ones that are not for that. And the large majority of them are not.
They're not, Joe, but here's the problem. You said that there's 1 billion Muslims in the world. So let's say that segment is about 10%. Joe, that's 100 million people.
No, that's my point. And here's the thing. I'll be honest with you. Certain countries, like Yemen, like the Sudan, you can't migrate. Because here's the thing. You have to clean your own house.
Right.
I can't trust you coming from that country because known terrorist cells are there. They're slaughtering Christians in the Sudan. They're slaughtering Christians in Nigeria.
Right.
You have to clean up your own house, and you have to be outspoken. You have to be. And I'm telling you, that's where it changes. When their own turn on those who are violent.
Well, the problem is those who are violent, their biggest victim are other Muslims. The largest group of people they kill are other Muslims because they don't allow for any dissent. That's why people in the Muslim, there's many people that you and I respect tremendously. People like E. Michael Jones, who has Muslim friends, who says these people, these people, like they're not represented by these jihadis and or anything else.
No,
There
absolutely
are
not.
there are people. There are fundamental disagreements that we have with them, but there are people of goodwill, many Muslims of goodwill, who don't like a lot of this, who would agree with us that Islam has been aggressive from its founding. Okay, they agree with us, and there's a lot of things I could agree with them on that they have beefs about. When America tries to export their quote unquote American values in the form of homosexuality and abortion to Muslim nations, yeah, now I know. Yeah, I would, if I was living in one of those countries, I would say, I don't like it as an American citizen that they try to impose that stuff on us and our kids. Imagine, like, if I'm a Muslim and I'm living in another country and part of the federal United States aid package that goes there is contingent upon them loosening up abortion restrictions or accepting gay marriage or whatever. I agree with them on a lot of things, but at the end of the day, the savages are running they are calling the shots in the Muslim world. Not if you want to call them moderates, I don't know what name to give them. Not the people of goodwill. The people of goodwill have no problem doing all the things that they set out to do. Okay, and I mean, and it's not. I don't think it's surprising, but if they try that here, once Trump is elected, Joe, I think all bets are off. They're not going to get a placating federal government that's going to start like wringing their hands. They're going to start. There's going to be a lot of pushback. There's going to be. I'm going to give you a final word on that one, Joe.
Well, all I would say is countries, just like there are certain countries that we don't on OFAC lists, we can't do business with. The Sudan. We don't do business with Russia. We don't do business with like known countries that are terrorists. We have terrorist cells. We don't do business with them. If your country is exporting terror, you can't migrate into the United States of America until you clean it up. The people have to clean it up. Like in Iran, they're good people in Iran, but your country is run by gangsters. And you have to clean that up. And that's not our job. That's your job. Because here's the deal. When enough people rise up against the small few that rule them, the party is over. They have to clean it up in those countries. They have to say enough is enough. And then listen, if you want to migrate, fine. But to your point, when you go to another country, my grandparents came from Italy, but they became American. I'm an American. Right. You have to have the idea. You can hold on to your culture, but you have to become a citizen. If you're not willing to do that, then you should not go to that country.
That's what I'm saying. If you really hate America, then why do you want to come here?
Well, they want the benefits. You see, that's
of course they do.
You know, and that's where you can't have it both ways. That's anybody. If you come here, like for instance, if my family migrated to Canada for business, say for instance, I got a job in Toronto, I'm Canadian. My children are, I am living in that country and I'm benefiting from that country. Therefore, I should have to become a citizen. That's the way it works. And if you're not willing to do that, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Jewish, whether you're Spanish, whether you're Asian, whether you're Indian, then we have a right to say, you don't come.
No, right.
Because this is America. And it's not a bad word to be an American. It's not a bad word to say, you know, they try to label it like nationalist. What's wrong with loving your country? What's wrong with wanting to have a culture? There's nothing wrong with that.
Joe, there's nothing wrong with that at all. I do want to answer, though, and we're not going to get all into the weeds because we want to move on at some point. We want to get to Kevin O'Leary and what he had to say about Canada. I want to just mention something to Northern Hillbilly, who's in the chat room. Listen, Joe and I have been critical of Israel. Joe and I have been critical of some of the things that, let's say, you could identify if you want to criticize certain Jews, let's say, but as a group. We're open and honest. We've interviewed E. Michael Jones, Northern Hillbilly. Have you? Okay. So my point is this: we're not pointing out. This is not a conversation about Gaza. That's another conversation, and a legitimate one. It's not a conversation about the things that Israel does that cheese people off. That's a legitimate conversation. We're not talking about that. What we are talking about is a political system. And I don't believe Islam is a religion. I never have. I never will say it is. And I know people who are Muslim. Islam is a political system that was founded in the 600s AD, and immediately took over many parts of the known world at that time. And they've been looking to take over Europe ever since. That's what we're talking about in this conversation. There's time to talk about those other things, but in this conversation, we're pointing out that the Muslims in general have always wanted to take over Europe, and that's a demonstrable historical fact. That Muslims have wanted to take over Europe, and they're doing a masterful job right now because the Europeans, as opposed to when the Catholic Church was running things, that fought against them at Lepanto, at Vienna, you have a European Union that's just letting them walk right in and do whatever they want. So it's not a legitimate criticism, Hillbilly, to say that we're not, tonight's not a discussion about Israel. That'll be a conversation for another night, okay? But this conversation was about Muslims or Islam in general and what they've been all about for about the last, I don't know, 1400 years. So you could hold your criticism. And if you don't like what I said, my mother would say, that's a too bad. Anyway, you're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello. And now, Joe, now I'm angry again. And I haven't been angry in a few weeks. I love you, Hillbilly. I love you. But I felt the need to say that. Anyway, so we have Trump. We're talking about Trump, Joe. We're talking about, what he's going to do, let's say, if they try this after he's elected. But what can we expect from the first 100 days? I don't know. Let's see.
What are your expectations for the first 100 days of the Trump administration in terms of things that you think they may address quickly?
Well, I've talked to the president myself, and I've told him I feel like he has about 6 months to implement the mandate that he's been given. We've all been given a clear mandate in this election with the popular vote, with majorities in both chambers, and that's to end the nonsense that the Democrats have been propagating, the Green New Deal stuff, the DEI that's permeated everything, and I think also DOGE. I think that's going to be a great committee, a great aspect to bring to Congress, but the DOGE recommendations are like the Constitution. If you can get my colleagues to follow them.
I am incredibly proud of the committees and their work on these standards. These are the strongest history standards in the entire country. These standards are pro-American, they're pro-American exceptionalism, and they strengthen civics and an understanding of our Constitution in every grade level. Underneath these standards, our children will learn the full and true context of our nation's founding and the principles that made America great and will continue to make us that exceptional country. In these standards, they champion the guidance that the Bible gave throughout American history. As we rolled out our Bible initiatives earlier in the year, this strengthens them by providing over 50 references to the Bible and Christianity. Our previous standards only had 2 references. So we have included the Bible and Christianity more in our history standards in the state of Oklahoma than any other state in the country. We also are unabashed about what we're doing with these standards. Voters elected President Trump with a clear mission to drive woke indoctrination out of our schools, to have no more left-wing content into our schools that undermine our education system and lie about American history. We are very excited about the work done with stakeholders on these standards. In these standards, we have more content around the tribal history of Oklahoma, including all of our tribes. We also strengthened requirements around teaching the impact and significance of the Tulsa Greenwood District, Black Wall Street.
So let's leave it there. You got Massey, made a good point. The agenda, the MAGA agenda, the Trump agenda is only as good. It's as good as the Constitution. It'll be great if you just follow it. And then, Oklahoma is asserting, at long last, we have a state that's asserting, to the left, no, we're teaching the Bible. It's an historical work. It's an historical work, even if you don't believe in it. It's an historical work, was the foundation of empires, okay, basically, and many of the principles that are biblical are infused in our republic, in our constitution, in our founding documents, in the way we're supposed to do things. And they're asserting that, and he says, under the Trump administration, we're going to be able to do that. Why? Because in the first term, Trump did what we asked him to do. He gave us the judges that will give a confidence to a governor like that or a superintendent to go to push back against the left, to say, no, you don't tell us what to do. We will teach the Bible in our public schools to our kids. We will do this. And Massey's saying, we're going to enact this agenda, okay, because it's good for America. Joe, I'll throw it over to you.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think Massey, and I'll first begin with him and then go to the gentleman from Oklahoma. I mean, when Massey said the critical piece is, will the Congress go along? And I'm going to tell you this, I think they're going to have to, and I'm going to tell you why. Because of X. And we saw the foreshadowing of that with the budget. You see, before, the press would not have covered the fact that Congress was giving themselves a $70,000 raise, that they were sending over billions upon billions of more dollars to the Ukraine while the people in North Carolina do not have electric. And we can go on and on and on. This was not disclosed to the American people. Well, now everything that Elon Musk and Vivek uncover is going to be on X. Full disclosure. He controls it, which means it's going to be front and center, getting millions upon millions of views.
It's going to be fantastic.
It's that is going to happen. And that's why, and we're going to talk about this next in the next clip, about the visas. They're trying to drive a wedge between Donald Trump, they're not stupid, and Elon Musk, because they see the danger in that.
Right.
The danger isn't that he's the richest man in the world. That is a danger, but that's not the primary danger. The primary danger is he is befriended the Trump administration, and all of the uncovered facts, which they are going to find, are going to be front and center. Joe, that is a wrecking ball. A wrecking ball. And that's going to be basically the leverage to these people who want to get elected.
Right.
They want, like, if you basically put that out there, and their constituents are going to be like, you voted against this?
Right.
Like, and that is the wrecking ball that this Trump administration has in their back pocket, that no administration ever had, because the press was always bought and sold by the establishment through the advertising, eating out of the same trough. Well, no more.
Right.
And then you go to what's going on in Oklahoma. What's wrong with putting the Bible, biblical, not necessarily teaching a religion, but putting biblical references in the public school? This is a Judeo-Christian country. We talk about culture. Every single preamble of all 50 states, the first sentence mentions God. This isn't Europe. Europe is a secular democracy. This is not. And they tried to label Christian nationalism as if it's something bad. You're the wrong type of Christian if you actually believe what Christianity says, that marriage is between a man and a woman, that you cannot slaughter children in the womb. You're the wrong Christian. You're a bad Christian. You're a Christian nationalist. Well, there's nothing wrong with being a Christian. And this country was founded on Judeo-Christian beliefs. And that's the way it is. And here's the deal. You could stay here. I'm not saying you don't have to be here if you don't believe in Christian. If you're not a Christian, you're not a Catholic. No, you're welcome. But you're not welcome to impose your view on our culture. The American culture is a Christian culture. And if you don't like that, tough.
But that's been the attack. The American culture is not, I will push back in this way. It used to be a primarily Christian culture.
Agreed.
All right. But that was a deliberate attack by secularists See, secularists don't have a problem if you said, if someone says, well, I'm a secular nationalist, they say, oh, bravo, I am too. I want the whole country to be just have secular principles. But if you say you're a Christian nationalist, say, I want the country to operate under Christian principles, okay, even by those who are not Christian, because they're universal, okay? So yes, you in a variety of ways and on a number of levels. Now, however, my larger point is they have no problem with nationalism. Like you said, they just have a problem with the Christian part of it. But as again, I'm going to go back to my mother who says, is it too bad? All right. No, you lose. Donald Trump, he win the election. You lose. Okay. And I had a friend here who visited, who is in Texas. And this was over the last week or so. And we were talking, I haven't seen him in a number of years. And he was here with his wife and his daughter. And we were hanging out. And he started to tell me, he goes, so now this guy is back in the day, he was a self-identified socialist, okay? I used to argue with him all the time. And so he says to me, so Joey, he said, what do you think? He goes, Trump's got a clear mandate. Clear mandate. He goes, I'm interested to see what happens. You want to know why? Because he's not an ideologue, my friend. He wants to see what's going to happen. He said there's a clear mandate. He didn't say it in a negative way. He wants to see, and we're going to play a clip. We are going to play you one insane clip. Please don't hold it against Joe and I from Don Lemon, where he says nothing. But we're going to follow that up with something from Stephen A. Smith before we get to Kevin O'Leary. But my point is, Joe, we need to infuse our culture and get back to the ABCs. Nobody's forcing you to become a Christian. Nobody's forcing you to become a Catholic. If you want to be an atheist, go right ahead. But this country is going to operate under certain ground rules, certain guardrails. And we're not going to be off the rails. And those guardrails and those ground rules are going to be inspired by the Bible. And if we educate kids in the Bible, okay, as being a foundational document for our nation, guess what? Then, Joe, this is why the left attacks it. Because the Bible teaches you things that the left can't stand. That God is supreme, not man. Just like that reporter said, we don't have the clip. The reporter on MSNBC was like, the Christian nationalists really believe that their rights come from God. Yes, because we honestly know that they don't come from you or Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton or anybody in the government. They come from God. Joe, I'll give you the final word on that.
Well, like I said, there's nothing wrong with having a culture, and countries should be proud of their culture. If you're from Spain, be proud that you're a Spaniard. If you're from France, be proud that you're French. You have certain cultural references, certain foods, certain mannerisms. Wonderful. The same should be for parts of the country. If you're from Arkansas, be proud you're from Arkansas, or you're from Maine, or you're from Vermont, or you're from wherever. The point is, there's nothing wrong with that. And you brought up the thing they don't want to happen. Basically, they don't want individuality. They don't want subsidiarity. They want to impose their will. And you saw that in the last 4 years.
Yep.
You saw that. You cannot dissent. You cannot argue. If you do, you're blackballed. You're thrown out.
Well, speaking of dissent and argument, let's keep the conversation going, and we're going to move forward because we do want to get to Kevin O'Leary because we want to talk about Canada. But now I apologize ahead of time. We're going to play back-to-back clips. One guy making no sense whatsoever, and the other guy seemingly making a lot of sense. You be the judge.
Finding out, you dumb fucking idiots. Now you're just figuring this shit out. You're so fucking stupid, and you deserve it. You fucking deserve it because you're so dumb. Jim, it's hypocrisy. So go with me here. Yes, I am gloating over your stupidity and how you were taken. I'm cackling in Kamala, says in Shanta. You have been co-opted because you're in a fucking cult and you don't even realize it because you have stupid MAGA brain and you don't get it. How stupid and dumb are you? And I'm just going to I can't wait to go through this. Okay. So I'm going to read this again. So Krishnan's appointment triggered an anti-Indian backlash on social media, particularly given his past advocacy for increasing green cards and immigration broadly. Oh no, immigration. We can't do the immigration because it's hot in here.
The only way for Trump to pull this off is to make the argument that it's all about America. It's all about America. And anything that contributes to America being number one is something that we should support. That has to be his argument. And it gets very, very interesting because now it's a debate. And having that debate, here's where the advantage is. At least in the Trump administration, there appears to be a debate allowed. What has ailed the Democrats? It's not an ideology alone. It's not their feelings alone. It's the fact that if you refuted what they said, if you are a part of their party, cancel culture kicked in. If you were not a part of their party, it was ostracism, and it was ultimately hate mongering and fear mongering that was thrown into the equation. There was no room for a debate. And enough voices weren't being heard. Diversity amongst those voices not being heard. You're black, you're white, you're gay, you're lesbian, you're heterosexual, you're transgender. It don't matter. You still had to have one form of thinking if you fell under their.
And Stephen A. is the reason, one of the reasons why a larger percentage of black men in America voted for Donald Trump. Okay, now I had to torture you with the first clip because Don Lemon has gone completely
Oh, he's
scrumbiad, as
crazy,
they
dude.
say.
He's off the hook.
I don't even know what he was trying to say there. He's just profanity laced
Well, let me
hatred.
try to like give a little background. What he's saying is these visas, Trump is for them, and so is Vivek, and so is Elon. And basically, what it is this: you come, say, from India, you go to Harvard, and you study math. Trump is saying, and Elon Musk and Vivek, that person should get a green card, a visa to stay here because they're going to create a company, most probably, as Elon Musk did, which is going to hire, could potentially thousands upon thousands of people to employ. And there are voices within the Republican Party, Charlie Kirk being one. I did listen to that, him speak out against this, saying, no immigration. It's a hard line. That job should go to an American. Now, again, like, honestly, why shouldn't you give somebody a chance if they're going to thrive in this country and create? I am not for merit-based immigration, but I think it's something to consider. And to have a hard line on anything outside of abortion, outside of acts that go against the will and nature of God is foolish. And what Stephen A. Smith says, let's talk about it. And that's what Trump is saying. Let's talk about it. There should be conversations. And what the liberal press is trying to do, particularly Lemon, and I've seen other posts, people being like, this is delicious. Oh, Donald Trump is basically an Elon Musk. They're fighting against
They're
their
grasping
own.
at straws. They're grasping at straws.
Because they see the danger and they
Right.
know the danger is real, and that's what they're trying to drum up. Just to give some background in case people don't know
No, I get
what
it.
that's
I
about.
get it. But my larger point is like, and I've had this argument with liberals before and leftists before. I've made the statement that soon as somebody says to me there is no debate on a thing, whatever that thing might be, I'm like, no, that's not debatable. That's fact. And I say right away, that's the thing you're supposed to debate. And the left doesn't like that because obviously they've always used that line about no, that's not debatable, to not have to engage in conversations about abortion, about gay marriage, about so many different things. No, that's evolution, which is bullshit. Excuse my language, but it is. It's bullshit. It's climate change. No, we don't have to debate that. And if you want to debate that, you're a denier, you're a hoaxer, you're a Nazi, you're a fascist, you're a racist, you're all these different things. Hillary would call us deplorables. Okay. No, as soon as somebody says that, the alarm bells should go off in your head. No, that's the thing that they're afraid to debate when they say there is no debate or that we don't have to debate that anymore. No, Joe and I say, let's go. You can come on this show. All right. And we'll debate you on anything at any time. The bottom line is this. That's what guys like, they want to try to make it seem like there's division, like, with Trump, like you said, Joe. The gold is losing its luster, before Trump's even inaugurated, because they want to try to make it seem like there's not division, and these things will be debated in the Trump administration. And Stephen A. is right. Trump will put everything on the table unless you say Unless what comes out of your mouth at that table is something completely ridiculous, Trump will hear what you have to say. He's a pragmatist. He's not an ideologue. Okay. I mean, I wish people would get that through their head. And Stephen A is right. That's the reason. That's what turned off a lot of people to Kamala, because he says, at least Trump's going to have the debate. One of the things I hope they have a debate about, I'm being serious, is Canada. But before we go to that clip, Joe, I'll throw it over to you.
Listen, at the end of the day, we just let in 12 million people. Many of them, if not most of them, have not been vetted. Our cities cannot handle it. New York, the mayor of New York, listen to the clips. He has spoken out against that. He's not against immigrants. New York is a city of immigrants. We don't have the social services, nor do we have the budget for what Biden's administration did, which if you ask me, was a blatant and absolute act of treason. Yes, treason, because they did it for political gain. And it was an internal domestic act of treason, basically unbelievable what they did. How many migrants died? How many children were trafficked? How many women were raped? As in the migrants, the women themselves. I'm not talking about the Americans. I'm not talking about even the drugs that came through, the cartels that are trafficking people, that are extorting them, putting them into slavery. I can go on and on. They knew it all and they didn't care. Treason. They should be arrested for what they did. Crimes against humanity. There should be Nuremberg trials because of what they did. Horrendous. Now, with all that said, maybe it's time we have to put the brakes on my immigration for a little bit. Maybe it's time to reassess our basically policies, make them fair. In the future, obviously, the doors will open again. But in the meantime, if someone is going to bring value to this country, like Elon Musk, who's not a citizen, who came to this country and employs hundreds of thousands of people, why wouldn't you let them? Doesn't it make sense? It makes sense to me. And the hardliners should relax a little bit.
Right.
There shouldn't be any hardline things. Like again, unless it's a crime against God, abortion, gay marriage. Let's talk about it. Let's compromise. Let's think it through. But hardline politics and ideological politics are losers. You have to bring people into the tent to win.
Right.
And to be honest with you, I was a little disappointed in Charlie Kirk for that position. But then again, I'm not going to turn him off. I don't hate him. It's just one position. Let's talk about it.
No, and I agree. If I could, I want to play Kevin O'Leary. I want to talk about Canada, but if I had to throw in my 2 cents, I think all immigration comes to a screeching halt till it takes enough time, only for the period of time it takes for Tom Homan to round up as many illegal immigrants and those who came across the border illegally and send them back, starting with the criminals. And then once you've gotten the majority of that job done, then sensible people could sit down and start talking about a real immigration policy that includes a lot of those people that you're talking about who will go to work for Tesla or Starlink and build those rockets that come down and you park them. They parallel park onto the tower and they shut off the engine. I mean, my point is I agree with you, but something dramatic's got to be done right now to reverse, not just stop what Biden did and Barack Obama did, but reverse that. And then let's start talking about it. But now here's the thing. I look at it this way. Well, how about this? I want to play Kevin O'Leary talking about this idea that's floating around about Canada, and then we're going to come back and we're going to give you the Joe and Joe twist.
It's basically the population of California sitting on the world's largest amounts of all resources, including the most important, energy and water. Canadians over the holidays, the last 2 days, have been talking about this. They want to hear more. And so, there's obviously a lot of issues, more details, but what this could be is the beginning of an economic union. Think about the power of combining the two economies, erasing the border between Canada and the United States, and putting all that resource up to the northern borders where China and Russia are knocking on the door. So secure that, give a common currency, figure out taxes across the board, get everything trading both ways, create a new, almost EU-like passport. I like this idea, and at least half of Canadians are interested. The problem is the government's collapsing in Canada right now. Nobody wants Trudeau to negotiate this deal. I don't want him doing it for me, so I'm going to go to...
And here's the thing, and then I'm going to throw it straight over to you. In all of human history, this idea, Joe, that because we live at this time, oh, we can't do that. What do you mean? It's impractical. Canada's its own nation. America's its own nation. Joe, borders have been changing throughout human history. What is the difference? My proposal will be slice off everything west of Ontario, going up to Alaska. So I guess that would be what? British Columbia,
Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan, all the west where all the oil is. Okay, let those people decide if they want to secede from Canada and become the 51st, 52nd, 53rd, and 54th states of the United States. And let Ontario and Quebec, let that remain Canada. And that part of Canada without that oil that Justin Trudeau absolutely hates, but loves the money from, okay, that part of Canada will come around. And you know what they'll want to do? They'll say, we'll do whatever you want, but we're going to become a part of the United States too. My larger point, borders have shifted all throughout history. Why shouldn't it happen now?
Well, let me just give a little background. First of all, who is Kevin O'Leary? Kevin O'Leary, for those who don't know, ran for the Conservative PM in Canada, I believe, in 2018. For those who are in the chat, correct me if I'm wrong. He ran and he lost. He is a very rich man. He's a businessman. He's always on financial shows, giving his opinions, talking about the markets. Canada right now is not for. It's overwhelming from what I have seen and what I have read and what I have heard. They're not for becoming the 51st state of America. Now, clearly, Eastern Canada would not be for that. It's very liberal. But to Joe's point, Western Canada, Alberta, Saskatchewan could potentially entertain it. But I did hear, and again, from a very reliable source, someone in Canada, that it's not a popular idea. Again, because you're Canadian. But that's not what O'Leary is proposing. He's proposing something that's along the lines of the EU. What does that mean? You're free to work. You're free to travel across the border, a common currency, which helps importing and exporting businesses. As currencies change, it impacts either America or Canada. That is taken off the table, which makes it easier to trade. And Canada has resources, and so do we. And it would be beneficial to Canada if we acted and partnered together, because when we're together, we're stronger. And that's what O'Leary is pitching. He's not pitching basically for you to lose your country. And I can understand that Canadians don't want that. But
Right.
That's not what he's doing. He's saying you have a common passport, as the people in the EU do. You're basically free to work. You're free to travel, common currency. It would be, if you ask me, a powerhouse, because we're a democracy. And
But eventually,
please,
Joe, some of those proposals that he said and you agree with, but eventually those things, you talk about a common currency, easy movement between the two countries for workers, similar wages and everything else. Joe, that's laying the foundation for eventually Canada and the United States to merge. I mean, you talk about a common currency. That's probably one of the first things. I mean, we have a common language already. For the most part, we have a common, at least generally speaking, religion. The Canada, I don't know what they would call themselves, but obviously the Christian influence is there, particularly in Quebec. But the thing is this, the foundation's already there. You start doing things like common currency and things like that, a lot of people are going to say, well, why don't we just become part of the United States? Potentially. I'm saying potentially.
Well, again, I think that's the deal breaker. Like Quebec tried to secede, they voted and it didn't win. That's up to the people. We're not here to impose our will. That's not what a democracy is all about. It's about the people, the voice of the people. The proposition is we could help each other. And I think it's a good one. And to be honest with you, You have had, I think it's 9 years under Trudeau. He has wrecked your country. He's wrecked it. It's going to take decades to fix because of what that man did. He's a globalist. He did not represent the Canadian people. He represented a larger ideology that destroyed the middle class, absolutely destroyed the middle class. And that is something that's going to take a long time to recover from. And this type of proposal could potentially jumpstart the Canadian economy. I would welcome it with open arms. You're our friends. I go to Canada often, Montreal, because I'm on the eastern part of the United States, and I drive up there. I love Montreal. And frankly, I think it would be wonderful. I think it would be good for you. It would be good for us. We share the same continent, and frankly, we're stronger together. We should be friends. And frankly, the person that has caused a divide between our two countries is Justin Trudeau, because he does not share our values. Justin Trudeau is not for democracy. Don't get caught up in the rhetoric. Justin Trudeau has acted like a tyrant, and he has destroyed your people. And that is something, frankly, you have to resolve. You have to vote him out. But I think this is a good idea. I'm all for what Kevin has put forth. I hope it happens.
Listen, again, you're talking about a practical man in Donald Trump, not an ideologue. He's not looking to take over Canada like the left is trying to say in MSNBC and the rest of them. But if he sees the benefits of this, call it an alliance. Forget
That's a
about the
good word.
NAFTA idea. Call it an economic alliance, a real one, okay, that benefits both nations, gets both countries because of the oil there and the oil here. Okay, you could forget about it. You could tell the Middle East goodbye. Okay, we don't have to worry about you anymore. You guys want to act like savages? Go act like savages. We won't have anything to do with them unless the American people are foolish enough to elect another Democrat who's going to make us energy dependent again after a president makes us energy independent. Anyway, long story short, I think it's a great idea. I have relatives in Canada. I love Canada. I grew up going to Niagara Falls my whole life to go see my Canadian Italian side of the family, my mother's side of the family. And I hope a good deal could be worked out. We have a lot of our friends that are in the chat room that come here and watch us at the front line with Joe and Joe every Thursday. Have supported us now for 5-6 years that are up in Canada. We love you guys. We would love it. I would love it. I want the best for them. So here's the bottom line, Joe, and then we're going to sign off. The worst for them is Justin Trudeau. So the best for them would be anything that gets him out of office and gets Canada back on its feet. Anyway, Joe Resinello, great show, great conversation. Want to thank you all out there for joining us at the front line with Joe and Joe. We love you all. Please, wherever you're watching this, X, Rumble, Facebook, YouTube, like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Help us out. And remember, until next week, Thursday night, 9 o'clock Eastern time, we had a great crowd tonight, and that crowd is going to grow even more. But remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is